So welcome everyone to our webinar for today. As part of our EduSeries. It's a new series that we're bringing around specifically technology and education. And the focus today is on student success and specifically the role of digital in the academic institution and how we can help to achieve this success. So today you're hosted by myself, Shaun Dale. I'm the Managing Director at Enterprisecloud. We focus on delivering technology solutions on the Microsoft platform to our customers, and we're always looking at ways to improve businesses and to help you to have a more efficient business and to put your most important asset, which is your customer or your student, at the center of everything you do. And so I'll be your host. Tanya Kamash, my colleague, is with me today. She will be attending to all the questions. She'll be sending through links after the webinar to those who want to get to the recording. And we welcome all of you to this fine day. Right, so from an agenda point of view today, there's really three key topics that I want to go through. The first one is talking about this audience, the student that wants to go on a journey with you. And the first topic is really going to be about why should you care about this journey? Why should you care about the student in the first place? And there's some exciting insights that we want to share. The second part of that is, well, if now we understand that students are going through this journey at various levels and through various mechanisms, what is the role and therefore the impact of digital going to be in this journey, and how can we make things as amazing as possible? And throughout this conversation, we're going to talk about specifically how digital is going to support and amplify the organization to ensure the success. Technology at the end of the day is about people, and it's about helping you to do more with less, and definitely to make more of an impact. So that's the agenda in brief. We have 2 hours scheduled for this webinar, although we'll see exactly how long that will go. We do have a scheduled break in the middle of the content to go and stretch some legs, get a cup of coffee and all that, but I'll give you the cues as to when that is. Right, so let's dive in. Let's get to know the audience and understand their journey. So there's this debate that's been playing out for years on social media and in amongst the corridors and conversations about, is the traditional education qualification still relevant in today's terms, or are we trying to, or are people more favored towards skills-based learning and applying that skill into the workforce and getting immediate benefit from it? And it's a big debate that's, as I said, that's been going on, and we've gone and put some clips here from Twitter to say, here's this guy saying degrees are useful or are not useful, skills are. And there's a lot of noise and a lot of conversation that comes on both sides of the fence. Not all of it, very clean, and not all of it above board. But people have got a lot of different opinions when it comes to this, and I think it's because it makes a personal impact. You know, if I might have gone through the traditional academia route, and therefore I'm protective of it, or I might have not because I didn't have means or whatever the case may be, and so I'm against it. Or I've seen people maybe study too much and then battle to get into the workplace and apply their skills. I certainly know someone who did about 3 degrees before he even started working, and had an MBL, and he hadn't done a day of work. And I thought, well, this is a bit strange. Why would you go through that level of academia without trying to apply it to some sort of real world skill? So this debate is personal and it rages on, and I think there's lots of different argument points that have merit. There's a couple that I love at the top here. Apple, IBM, and Google don't care anymore if you went to college. About time others don't as well. It's an interesting aspect. This is my all-time favorite one. All my favorite surgeries have been done by degree holders, to be honest. So I tend to agree with Eric over there. I think that there are different reasons that formal qualification is required, and there's different reasons that skills are applicable and necessary. And so this debate rages on, and I think the most important point to point out is that it's personal, and it's about the student, and it's about the their experience, and it's about what they're going to do with that education. That is the most important thing. It's not actually the debate that matters. It's about the person. And so when you look and put the person at the center of the conversation, then you say, well, what is Frank wanting to do with his education and with his life? And how can we as an academic institution, that our product is education, how do we make sure that he goes on the right path towards success? And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. And I think in the past, there's been, certainly if you look at industry across the board, not just in higher education, if you look at financial services, if you look at manufacturing, etc., there's this kind of old thinking that we have this powerful brand, we have this name in the market, customers are going to come to us and they're not going to go anywhere else because they've been coming to us for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is, and we have this loyalty. And I think that is very true in academic institutions that I have seen and been a part of, where I remember back to my varsity days, I don't think I ever got spoken to by anybody. I was there because the institution was great and I went along and did my degree, and they kind of forgot about me in the sea of what was happening over there. And so rather than kind of drawing on this old knowledge, what we thought we'd do leading up to this event is just go and get the voice of some few Gen Zs and millennials out there and just go and ask them a few questions about what they thought of this conversation, what they thought of academia, what they thought of themselves and their role in this process. And we asked them a bunch of questions over the survey. So we surveyed, we kickstarted the survey, I think mid last week. We've had over 100 responses, great response in a very short space of time. We put the request out over Instagram and Facebook, really trying to target school leavers, trying to target university goers, and ask them a bunch of questions about their experience with higher education. And the results were pretty interesting, quite contradictory at times, but insightful nonetheless. And I've summarized some of the questions that we asked in this in the presentation. So let's just take a walk through a couple of these things. So from a demographic point of view, who did we survey? Well, from an age characteristic, largely between the ages of 18 and 26, as you can see. So, we're talking Generation Z, maybe on the edge of millennial, but young people. The second thing, we looked at gender. We did ask with which one of the 68 genders they were part of, and largely we got male and female, which was interesting to me. And interesting that overwhelmingly female responses. I suppose the sample size is not that big to infer anything from this, but it was just interesting nonetheless. The other question we asked them is, are you currently studying, or are you in matric, or whatever the case may be? And so a large proportion is either currently studying or planning on studying. And so they're the right kind of people that we wanted to be targeting to say, what was your experience like with applying to the institution? How are you feeling about it? How do you want to be communicated with, etc.? And those are the questions that we're going to dive into now. So if we look at trying to understand their needs, one of the first things we said to them is, why would you, or why did you choose that institution? And the results are pretty fascinating. If you go and have a look there, overwhelmingly, it's about content. It's about saying, hey, this institution has the course or the degree that I want because I want to achieve something else. This is a step in my journey towards becoming a lawyer, an educator, an actuary, a physician, whatever the case may be. They are studying with intent to take themselves somewhere else, and it's that content that they're after. Then we've got some practical things like location, whether it's online learning capable or not. Obviously, the pricing conversation comes up there. And then we have another few things like my family and friends went there, so it's kind of that generational brand loyalty, I suppose. Some people are really, really practical about it, having accommodation. So really very interesting and varied responses. But for me, overwhelmingly, this content, the focus on content and focus on me and my future is really coming through loud and clear. The next question we said to them is, or asked them, what do you believe that getting this degree or completing this studying means to you in the future? And that was a really, really interesting piece of insight, because a lot of it, most of the responses were in this, as you can see there, in this world of, I want to do something with my life. I want to follow some kind of purpose. I want to aspire to a career. I want recognition from my family to make them proud. Maybe many of them were, I'm the first in my family to have gone through this process, and I just want to make them proud, and I want to do something with my life. And so it's fascinating, and I think that this is a uniquely South African experience, that we are aspiring as a nation to achieve great things, and the youngsters out there are saying, I want to be part of this. I want to do something with my life. I can do something with my life, and it's amazing to see. And so this, if you look at these two questions combined, we're saying the role of the educator at the moment is about helping these young people and old people alike follow their path towards their future journey, towards their success, and whatever that comes with. And I think that's really, really an important takeaway. The next thing we did was we focused in on the application process itself. And we said, okay, let's have a look. How did you experience it? And all those kind of things. So the first question was nice and simple. Was it easy to apply? Overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. Some said no. We didn't ask the particular details. And some of them said sort of. I love those people that are right in the middle, which is great. But it looks, by and large, that people are saying it's okay to apply. But I think that we can look at this and say, look, there's enough work there, where there's enough indication that we need to try and see if we can make this process more seamless, which we'll be talking about a little bit more as we go along. The next thing, which is quite interesting, is we said, okay, how responsive do you find the institution that you're applying to or that you're in communication with? And overwhelmingly, we've got responsive right at the top there, but you can see sort of we start off with somewhat. They're okay. As kind of 35% of the respondents. Then many of them said very responsive, and some said extremely responsive. And I think that this probably depends on who you are, what your experience is with that institution, and whether you got in. I think there would be probably a different kind of conversation if you didn't get in. Then you might say, well, they're not responsive at all, they didn't listen to me, whatever the case may be. So we it was quite interesting, and I think if you look at the next piece, it becomes even more interesting, because we then asked them, what don't you like about the application process? A lot of them said it takes quite a long time to get through. Some of them said it's expensive to apply, which we've seen and heard. Obviously, we've got this constant conversation about money and pricing and things like that, making it accessible. But then, very interestingly, we've got lack of feedback coming up. And these were the three top things that people didn't like. There were many others that kind of scored in the insignificant amounts of responses. But, so we, as I said, there's a little bit of contradiction there. So, yes, we're finding the institutions to be responsive, but part of what we're getting frustrated with is a lack of feedback. And as I said, I think potentially it depends on this experience and your journey through this application process as to whether you find the institution to be responsive, to give you the right feedback. Because of course, if you get in and everything's going well, then you're going to think everything's great, or you're probably more inclined to think everything's great. So that was pretty interesting. Then the last sort of set of questions were really focusing in on their preferences and what they're expecting from you as an institution. So the first question we said was, okay, let's have the conversation, digital versus traditional. So would you want to be part of an organization that is leading with digital, or are you okay with kind of the more traditional Ivy League, so to speak, kind of institution? Many people, sort of 40%ish, said yes, we do want digital. Many people, another 40% odd, said it doesn't really matter, and another 20% said no, they don't prefer digital over traditional. And so I think there's still a very strong affinity to I want to go to the traditional academic institution. I want to go be part of something. I don't care whether it's digital or not. I just want to be part of it. A lot of people are saying, I want digital because I'm a digital native. I've been born with a cell phone in my hand, and I want to have that kind of experience. And then some are saying, well, it doesn't really matter. And I guess that again is part of the depending on your institution, the culture that is there in the student base, the culture amongst the learning staff and educators, etc. And so there's quite a lot behind that to dive into, but interesting nonetheless. The next thing we said, really topical at the moment, would you prefer to be online or would you prefer to be on campus? Overwhelmingly, and I think we're seeing, if you watch LinkedIn, there's lots of these kind of surveys and conversations of, do you want to work from home? Do you want to work from the office? Do you want a kind of hybrid scenario? And overwhelmingly across those kind of surveys, I'm noticing a trend towards people saying, I want a hybrid. I like that little bit of flexibility that I can do what I need to do. If you're a student and you think of that flexibility might be, hey, now I can actually get a job. I can earn the money that I need to pay for this education, and that allows me to be there and be participative in the process. So if I can blend that learning, I can have a little bit online, but I also want to be part of being on campus, being part of the vibe, hanging out with my friends, meeting new people, etc., etc. So I think as educators, we've got to look at this and say, well, how do we find these people in this need and provide them something that speaks to both of these parts? It's not all of one and it's not all of the other. We're entering this new phase where it's this hybrid approach in between the two, which is super interesting. The next question we asked them is, what about channel of preference? So how do you want us to contact you, or how do you want to be able to contact us? So bang, right at the top of the list, email, which was quite surprising to me, I must be honest, but email's still very much part of how we communicate in the professional context, and so I guess email's all the way up there. And that might be also indicative of how institutions are kind of forcing or putting channels out there for students to communicate through. Email is a traditional channel, and so it's pretty prevalent. But right behind it is WhatsApp, and right behind that is chatbot. And so what we're starting to see here is it's not technology people saying, hey, you've got to put in a chatbot because it's the latest, greatest thing, or you've got to, kind of connect in with WhatsApp for Business and start having these chat conversations. It's actually the students themselves saying, hey, it would be super convenient if I could open WhatsApp and have a conversation, get access to information and do whatever I need to do. So pretty interesting. And then lesser on the phone side of things, I'd love to actually look at age as a correlation to some of these things to see, is it who's asking for phone? But I do think that I'm a personal, I love speaking to people. I think you get to the bottom of things quite quickly. I'm experiencing a support call with a company at the moment where I probably have sent 30 emails backwards and forwards to try and resolve a simple thing. And I'd really love to just speak to a human being in a 10-minute conversation and get to the answers. So I think, again, this channel of preference is showing us that we need to show up in different ways and be there for them. But we've also got to look at kind of what are we going to do with those channels, or what kind of information? Because I think if they were asking for their grades, and that WhatsApp is not a great channel for that. And this led us to another question: is kind of what do you want from getting answers? Would you prefer speaking to people? Would you prefer going through a self-service kind of option, or would you like something else? And so overwhelmingly, people responded there saying, I want to speak to a human being. And the detail that came through a lot was, I want to talk to my lecturer about things related to courseware, or I want to talk to them about difficulty that I'm having with the subject matter, and I need to, get them to help me to pass the exams or to write the correct thesis or whatever the case is. So when it comes to content, they want to be in touch with the lecturer. When it comes to kind of administrative things, they want to speak to support staff directly. Many of them said, hey, if it's there, give me self-service. I'm perfectly happy to deal with that stuff. And I think, again, this is one of those things of saying it's not all of one or all of the other. It's a hybrid approach, saying there are certain things that we need and can do in person or in a face-to-face or a human-to-human kind of connection. Then there's other things that we can do through self-service. And what we've got to do is look and say, well, how can technology support this conversation and help to amplify that reach in the right way, and over the right channels and to the right end. So that was kind of the gist of it. We asked 25 questions. There was a bunch more data that we gathered through the process. These were the highlights. And so if I just summarize them in conclusion, The first one is that content is key. As I said before, they're on this journey. The content that they're there for is going to set them up for the future, and that is what they ultimately are there for. And it's personal to them. There's a lot, as I mentioned before, a lot of, I want to make my family proud. I want to achieve great things. I want to be at a world-class institution, and I want to be part of something. And so it's deeply personal. It's not just studying. It's not just ticking a tick box because my daddy told me to go or whatever. This is part of how they want to amplify their lives going forward. I think, as with anybody at the moment, everybody's time and money conscious. There seems to be not enough of one or the other, quite frankly. And so we've got to look at that and say, well, how do we balance out how much things cost at a practical sense, and how much time we have to deal with certain things. So, we've got to balance it out and say, well, okay, I don't actually have a lot of time, and so I need to make sure that I have the content available to me as I need to, that I can reach out to people and get things done quickly, etc., etc. All right, the next thing is, as I said before, we've got this hybrid learning mode approach that we need to cater for. Certainly hybrid kind of communication channels. It's a lot of hybrid, and it's about, that old saying, horses for courses. We've got to make sure that we're producing the right content or the right conversation over the right channel and in the right mechanism to achieve the right objective. A lot of what we're seeing and inferring the data is that this is truly a digital native generation, which everybody would tell you. Generation Z is all about digital first, as I said before, born with the cell phone in the hand kind of thing. But I think it's a little bit different in the African and South African context. Yes, they are digital native when they have access, when they have means. When they don't have means, they're relying on more traditional channels and things like that. It's not to mean that they don't have the aspiration. It's just that they maybe don't have the means to get there. And so, in a first world kind of scenario, we would have very different answers, I think, to some of the questions, very different approaches. And so one must think through this process and say, well, actually, maybe what we need to do is look at mobile, because throughout Africa, we see mobile as a huge influencer in how people live, how they pay for their groceries, how they conduct trade, how they reach out and stay in touch. And the mobile becomes their sort of digital weapon of choice. Whereas in other countries, in other mechanisms, it might be a tablet, it might be a PC, it might be some other thing. So the mode of digital is not just digital. Okay, cool. Just because it's on the internet, it must be digital. That's not true. We've got to look and say, well, how do we provide these things in a mobile first way? Because that is really uniquely South African. It's uniquely African. And so when we approach that digital native, we really have to put them in their context and understand them. The last point is that overwhelmingly, if I look through how the comments come in and how they talk about, I want to speak to my lecturer about things, they want personal attention. Not just want, they expect personal attention. We asked another question of, what could your institution do for you? And we got some really, really, really super interesting answers. And they were too varied to kind of draw any kind of parallels. But I can tell you that the one parallel through everything is that they want to be reached out to personally. They expect that you're going to have that dialogue and that conversation with them. And so we really, really need this. And so ultimately, cool, we've gone through this. I think the survey was super interesting. A lot of insight. Probably, maybe you knew this before. I would be interested to hear some of your thoughts about what you've experienced and whether this correlates or was in contradiction with things that you've seen. So let's have that chat a little bit later. But the question that we posed leading up to this webinar was, why should you care about all of this? And the answer is that your audience is diverse and they're personal. Every single person that is coming and wanting to study at your institution is an individual. They're not part of a pack. They want to be seen and they want to have preferences. And so it's about them. And it's in their world, it's all about them. It's all about their future. It's all about their affordability. It's all about what they can do with what they have. And so we cannot respond as an academic institution in a kind of generic way across everybody. We've got to look at the individual and say, let's break it up. Because Taylor over here is a 20-year-old male. He's an aspiring art director. He wants to be an entrepreneur one day. He's been running things on the side his whole life, trying to hustle and get his life going. He loves to socialize. He loves music. He loves fashion. He loves everything that's on trend. And so he's got very, very, very different needs to Norma, who's 19 years old. So in the same age bracket, but actually not the same at all. She's digital native. She's a tech fundi. She loves social media. She loves being online, having debates. She gets stuck into those Twitter debates, and she goes for it. She's charitable. She wants to live with purpose. There's a whole bunch of different things behind Norma than what there are about Taylor. And over here you've got Marie. She's a 34-year-old female. She's a senior manager trying to study to become or to take on a more executive role. And she's very different. She's career driven. She's got 2 kids. She's super busy trying to balance everything. And so you can see this is just a small little tiny sample, but we have such diverse needs. They're not just students coming to a faculty. By the way, that was one of the super interesting things, is that I think we got probably 2 respondents that were studying education, and the rest were all completely diverse, from studying physics to studying stats and to looking at accounting and education and IT, and also we had a really diverse response group, and it just speaks to the point that this audience is a diverse audience who has very very personal needs and needs you to respond in a very personal way. So we unpack and we address each of them on their own, and we say, look, why does it matter? Why do I care? Well, because let's see. If we go back to Taylor, we say, okay, he's got this hustle. He wants to do studying part-time because he's got to fit in job. He's got to fit in his side hustle. He's got to do his things. He's a socializer. He wants to be around the place. And so we've got to think about that. He's self-funding this. So the pricing and the affordability is super important to him. And so we need to keep that in mind. He wants short courses because he wants to take the skill and apply it into his workplace and then take the next step in his career. Then learn some more skill and apply it to his workplace and take the next step in his career. So a very different approach. He wants to be on campus because he wants to blend in with crowds. He wants to create new connections. He's an entrepreneur. He wants to go and he sees the value in that human connection. He wants to go and see how he can expand his business, how he can expand his mind and go and do more things. So he wants that personal connection. He also wants guidance because, you know, he wants to be an entrepreneur. He loves creativity. So art direction might be something, but he needs guidance. He needs someone to say to him, let's look at a set of vocations and where can we take you and what is the right course of action for you? Because he needs help. He doesn't want to just go pick from a catalog and say, cool, I'm in at a BA and I'm going to pour 4 years of my life into it and hopefully it's the right track for me. And he might, through all of this, be a perfect candidate for some or other internship. And so it's not just about him, it's also about other stakeholders that you have in your institution to say, well, you know, we've got business coming to us saying, hey, we want candidates coming out of university. We've got some BE targets to meet in terms of growth and education and things like that. And so he might be a perfect candidate for that. Somebody who is paying their own fees, who's struggling a little bit, doing clearly bright, clearly aspirational, might be perfect for that internship. And so if you didn't know who Taylor was, you would not have that opportunity to try and align him with the corporates that you're dealing with to say, how do we line up internship programs? He would just become a number in the sea of students. So let's move over to Norma and just unpack her a little bit. She wants to study full time because academia is part of who she is. She wants to learn more. She wants to grow more. Her parents are paying. She's privileged. And so for as long as mom and dad are footing the bill, she's in and she's going to do more and more. She's looking at, when she finishes her degree, she's immediately starting to plan her postgraduate qualifications. She's one of those people who wants to rack up the qualifications because it's important to her. She also wants to be on campus because she loves the vibe, but for a different way. She's not there to connect to try and grow a business. She's there to connect, to be part of something, to be part of this institution, to be part of the success of her fellow students, her own successes, that charitable, philanthropic kind of side of her that's coming out saying, you know, I want to be here and I want to be part of this. So she wants to be on the SRC, she might be joining debate clubs and all sorts of things. She's interested, she's all in. She wants to come in, she wants to soak it all up. She's in there full time, she's doing nothing else, and she's really in. And so looking at her, what does her future look like? Well, maybe she's going to be in academia her whole life. Maybe we need to move her from that into some kind of lecture position, or ultimately for tenure. Where is she going? Perhaps if that's not her path, she's definitely someone that we want to start looking after as a future alumni, to say, look, you're going to study, you're going to have this great experience, and you're going to bring people to us, and you're going to, wherever you go, you value the role of education, and you're going to bring that and bring more people to us. So we're all in. So completely different from Tyler. And so let's move over to Marie and have a look at her kind of makeup and personality. She also wants part-time. As I said before, super busy, kids, running, 20 different things all at once. Part-time is the only way for her to go. She's very fortunate to have a company funding her studying, which is really great, but she's got some approvals to go through. She's got, some corporate red tape to jump through. She's got to get purchase orders, and she's got to connect the corporate finance people with your finance people, and it's a little bit more headache than people who just pay their bill. But that's okay. That's another characteristic of her. She's specifically looking after executive education. She wants to grow her career, as I said before. She's got that aspiration, so she needs the right course. She wants this education online, because that is the only way that she's going to be able to manage it. She's got to carry on working. She's got to carry on being a mom of 2 kids, doing all the things that she needs to do over there, and just a lot of responsibility on her in her daily life, over and above now wanting to further herself. And so online is the only way for her. She's also highly demanding. She's coming from that corporate environment, so she's expecting quick turnaround on requests. She's expecting detailed answers. She's expecting detailed courseware, etc., A highly demanding person. She's not there waiting for things, going, oh, it's okay, I'm fine. She kind of wants it. If she puts a question in, she wants it now. And for her, because of this kind of demographic who she's in, she's a potential for some cross and upsell. If you're running executive education programs, she's the kind of person that you want to learn more about, so that you can say, well, okay, why don't you bring a colleague on the next one? Maybe can I speak to someone in HR to just understand what your kind of learning programs are all about, and your career development programs, etc. And so there's an opportunity to look at Marie not just as a student, but as a future source of income, and as a future advocate as well, to say, how do we not only take her additional courseware and help her with her learning path, and saying, well, where do you want to get to? Oh, you want to get over there? Okay, fine. Let's do these kind of executive courses, so that you can get there and bring that value back into your organization. And let's start having the conversation with some of your colleagues as well. So as you can see, completely diverse people. They all want to study, they all want to come to your institution, they all want to do completely different things for completely different reasons. And so you cannot take the same brush and paint over all of them and say, hey, we're the faculty of commerce, and we do what we've been doing, and that's, people are privileged to be part of our institution. No, that's not it anymore. So you really do need to have a look at things and say, how are we going to deal with this large, diverse set of students? And ultimately look at them as customers, because guess what? When they leave, they become alumni, they become potential brand advocates, they bring more people, they bring the kids potentially one day. The family members, you saw the role, one of the questions was, or one of the answers was, I want to make my family proud. And so if you did make your family proud, why wouldn't you want to bring your family to be part of it too? And so if you look at this customer base differently, as future income, as future brand ambassadors, you've got to treat them differently, because of course you can't become a brand ambassador in bulk, everybody coming in, getting their number, being part of the washing. As I say, in my experience with my 3 years at the Rand Afrikaans Universiteit, which was a great match for the I kind of went in, I clocked in most times, I did my lectures and I wrote my exams, and when it was done, it was done. I had a whale of a time. I socialized with friends, I did all that stuff, but I didn't get involved. And the university didn't get involved with me. And there was no one-to-one connection. It was, I went to RAL, I got my degree, that was the transaction, off I went, done. And I think that was okay 20 years ago. It's not okay now. Now we're in a different space, and you've got to think differently about this. I think I've labored this point almost to death, but everybody wants personal service and attention. It's not just you. Well, think about your personal life. If you're frustrated with DSTV, or if something breaks on your phone and you need it fixed, you want that personal service, you want that attention, you want that quick turnaround. It's not okay to wait 6 weeks for resolution. You want them to know who you are, and you want them to respect you, and you want them to deal with you appropriately. And so guess what? Your students and your customers want the same thing from you. They want that personal service. We need to be time and money conscious, as we've spoken about before. And so we need to make sure that we're matching the right programs and the right content and the right demand to the right demand, and making sure that we've got things available for people as much as we can, as much as obviously practical. As I said before, they've got these different needs. And so if you recognize the need, if you recognize these different personas and their different requirements, you'll spot the opportunity, because there is opportunity. There's huge amounts of opportunity. It's just that, in my experience, institutions are often overwhelmed, understaffed, under-resourced. And so how are you going to spot, let alone take advantage of that opportunity? You may know it's there. You may see it there. Sometimes it's about, how do we unlock that? How do we do something about it? And so if I summarize this all, I'm going to call it, we need to see how to cater for one-to-one student relationships, institution to individual student. How do we deal with that, but at scale, times 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 60,000 students, 100,000 students in a calendar year? And so that is the biggest challenge. There are some more challenges, so let's put that one at the center, because it's not that's not enough. Let's go and add to it. So we've got COVID. I'm getting over that conversation, but we've got COVID and the problems that are coming along there with dealing with remote work, dealing with remote education, all the things that are about that. You're facing a highly competitive market. Everybody's eating each other's lunch. There are only so many MBA applicants in a year. We've got to go for that business. There's only so many people who can afford to do doctorate degrees, etc., etc., etc. So it's highly competitive, and I have more choice than I ever did before. If I'm leaving school, if I'm in the workplace and I need to study, I can do anything. I can go do a 10-day online course. I can do a 10-month online course. I can come and do a postgraduate program. I can do all sorts of things. And so it's highly, highly, highly competitive. It's not just about saying, hey, we've got our brand out there and our brand is strong and the people will come, because they just are not going to. Some will, as we saw in the survey, some of them go just because family, generational experience, etc. But I'm saying that, just like the rest of the corporate world out there at the moment, there's a highly competitive situation going on, and you've got to worry about it and think about it in a different way. And if you don't, those that do take advantage of that are going to start eating your lunch and going to start taking away the student base from you. And you're going to start having some new challenges. As I said before, access to resources, access to people, access to the right processes, the right technology is always an issue, and it's not unique to education. This is something that's across the board, but I think, in our experience, access to resources is really quite tough. Making sure we have the right people, making sure we have access to the right level of technology that we can answer all of these questions, that we can give this one-to-one personal service. And ultimately, this, the challenge with supporting and empowering staff to do the right work, to handle these vast numbers of requests and things that are coming in. We're now in silly season. It's now application season. Everybody's kind of checking where they can go, what they're going to do next year. How many of your institutions are sitting there going, oh, we got this, it's all cool, it's all fully automated, everything's fine, we have it in hand? I highly doubt it, and if you do, I'd love to hear more. But So most people at the moment are buried under paperwork and trying to capture application forms and trying to get people through the door, and they're trying to compete to see, can we get the best talent or the best school leavers in, because we're concerned about our reputation in the market, etc., etc. So this is like a perfect storm, right? And there's a lot of challenges, and I'm sure that I'm speaking to some of your challenges, and I'm sure that you have more. I don't have all the answers, and I don't have all the questions, but I have some, and so we can continue. So I think today it's enough about the kind of hard stuff, the difficult stuff, the challenges. Today we're here to talk about, well, are there some answers to all of this? And so Microsoft, as a business, spend a lot of time and investment into education around the world. It's a critical area of theirs at the moment. In fact, Shaun Dale, the CEO of Microsoft, has a special needs child, and we've seen over the last 5 years of him being the CEO how much focus he's put into education, not only in able people but also in disabled, and saying, how do we make education and technology more accessible to more people in better ways that are going to help them amplify their work. And so Microsoft have got this process called the Education Transformation Framework. As I said, we're doing a webinar series, and so we're going to be focusing in on student success today, and how does Microsoft have some answers to this, and how does Enterprisecloud, what have we done with some institutions out there, and bring some of that thinking back to you. In a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be focusing on the secure and connected campus, and I'll give you a bit of teaser into what's going on over there. There's some really interesting stuff, but just know that I can't get to all of the content because we'd be here for 3 days. Microsoft have a lot of answers in a lot of different places, and so if you are interested in understanding academic research and the role of technology there, just reach out to me. I'll connect you to the right content. I'll connect you to the right people. We can take you through some stuff. So yeah, there's a lot on offer. So let's focus in on student success, and that this is a personal journey. The next piece of the webinar is really going to focus on how does digital play a role in this journey? How does digital make this better? How does digital amplify your capability? And as a tech guy, I get super excited about this part of the webinar, because it's where we get to talk about stuff that we've done with some clients of ours in the space, and we get to show you some of the impact that's being made. So I get pretty excited about it. So I'm going to be showing you a bunch of different things that we've done and that Microsoft has capability areas in. If you are interested in any one of these things, please reach out to us and say, hey, I really, that XYZ piece was really super interesting to me, and I'd like to unpack that a little bit more. We can set up a session and we can go through it. Okay, so let's dive in. And the big question that we're seeking to answer now in the second part of the webinar today is, how can digital enable this student success? And when we look at the Microsoft Education Transformation Framework, there were really 4 areas that we want to focus on. First is student recruitment. The second one is, now that we've recruited them and we bring them in, how do we retain them and keep them going? Then how do we make them successful? How do we make sure that their journey has a green tick behind it, that they are successful, they've completed their studies and potentially start new studies? And then finally, how do we engage with the alumni and keep the conversation going and keep that wave of momentum flowing? And so those are the kind of 4 areas, the 4 core business areas that Microsoft Framework surrounds, and we're going to unpack those one at a time. So let's begin with student recruitment, and I'm going to bring back my friend Taelo. And I say, well, the first thing that we need to do, if you were listening in the first part, is we need to get to know Taelo individually. Now, how do we do that? We obviously don't have time to go and sit down and have lunch with 40,000 people to really get to know them. And so I'm not talking about a kind of relational, in the true sense of the word, get to know. I'm talking about a business relationship, yes. And obviously at the heart and center of that is we've got to keep good records of the people that come to our institutions, and that so that we can begin to understand who they are. And so traditional CRM, customer relationship management, is right at the heart of that. It's the database that you need, that has all of your student information, all the interaction, etc. And so if we're going to have a look at, this is Microsoft Dynamics, being set up to for an academic institution. It's actually one of our clients. And what we've got over here, this is it's just demo sample data. Taylor's not actually a real person. We might be. That picture is obviously a real person. Anyway, I digress. So here we've got all sorts of different information. We've got his WhatsApp number, his email address. We know whether he's the account payer or not. We know if he's part of, as I said before, he's working and studying at the same time, paying his own way. So he's working at Ogilvy, and he's a junior creative over there. And we've got some personal information. We know that he's single. We know when his birthday is. We know that he doesn't have any special needs, which is fine. And we know where he stays. And you can see that where he is on the journey with us by just looking at the record. We can also dive in, there to just understanding a little bit more about him. So if he comes along into this recruitment process, we want to know, where did he come from? So we've got this, let me just get my laser pointer here. So we can go over here and say, okay, he came in through an advertisement that we put out on social media. He responded to that, and so that's the lead source. Why do I want to know that? Well, I want to tie back marketing expenses, marketing spend, back to return on investment. And so we can start tracking that. I can see that he's been contacted, that he's in consultation maybe with a recruitment advisor or a student advisor, whatever the case may be. We know that he's interested in the Faculty of Arts and Design, that he's potentially looking at a high certificate in graphic web design, because that's what he's telling us that he wants to study at this point in time. We can see that he wants contact learning, that he might be wanting to head over to our Randburg campus, and that he wants to join us next year in the first semester. So at this point, we're tracking everything and every engagement and every conversation with Taylor as he comes through the student recruitment process. And we need to put it somewhere. And that somewhere is a powerful database that is relational, that we can gather all the information, all the contact details, that we can look at interaction information, and it really becomes the heart and soul and the centerpiece of everything that we then do with Taylor. The next thing is that we need to mold up our own interaction and our own business processes around the journey that Taylor wants to take. So if you looked at the top of that record, you might have seen this little ribbon. Now this is the business process ribbon that exists in Dynamics. And what it is it's set up, or we set it up, to follow and mimic your business processes. And they can be incredibly complex. If I go look at the logic that sits behind that little business process flow over here, we've got conditional branching, and we've got all sorts of decisions that are being made. And was I able to get in contact with him at the first step, yes or no? No, I wasn't. Okay, then follow a separate path. Send him an automated email, pop him an SMS. Whatever the case may be, we can sit and work with you to understand, what does this recruitment process look like in your organization, and how do we kind of come along to automate some of these tasks, to schedule work and assign it to different people, and to just generally amplify the staff's capability of dealing with all these applications that are coming through. Right, so the next piece then is augmenting the application process with some kind of digital intake. And when I mean digital intake, I don't mean, hey, here's a PDF document that you can download, that you can fill out by hand and then email it back to us. While you're using a digital channel, that is not inherently digital. Somebody's got to take that information, they've got to recapture it, there's potential for error. And so what we want to do is go and make this fully digital as much as possible. And so we worked with an institution. I've just taken a couple of screenshots from their system. And here's Taylor logging into their application portal. You can either create an account, he can log in with his social account if he doesn't want to create his own account. And when he's in, he can go here and set up that application in the most simple possible ways. Just capture a couple of details, indicate whether he wants to work full-time, part-time, which campus he's interested in, etc., etc. All of these fields plug immediately straight back into that core CRM system that's keeping track of everything to do with Taylor. And so it's an extension that he's actually capturing his own details in your system, making sure that they're correct, making sure the fidelity of the data is high, making sure that it's accurate to what he wants right now. And because he's doing it in real time, you are able to respond in real time. And so if he, as an example, this little slider that says, do you know what you want to study? If he said no, we could fire off an immediate alert to somebody, to a student advisor, to say, Tayola's online right now. He needs some help. Why don't you reach out to him, see how you can help him? We can pop in a chat window over there, because it's a website effectively. We can say, how do we engage digitally immediately while I'm there, while I have some questions. And so it's not the, hey, here's a form, go fill out the form and send it in, and then hope and pray that you get in. It can be a highly immersive and highly collaborative experience for the student, and doesn't require a lot of extra effort. It just requires technology, and that's where I get super excited. The next piece is that, as I said to you before, if we look at the responses and we look at the South African context, start thinking mobile. Start thinking of, okay, I want to fill in an application form digitally on a mobile device. How am I going to do that? Well, that's great, because we can take that exact same application portal that we built, and it's responsive out the box. And so irrespective of whether I'm using a mobile phone, whether I'm using a tablet, whether I'm using a PC, whether I'm standing at a kind of kiosk in the foyer, in the lobby, and I'm filling things out there, or I'm in a computer room, whatever, I can use the same piece of technology to take in those application forms, which is pretty cool. When I want to upload documents, and maybe I need to give you my academic transcript or my proof of matric, or whatever the case may be, I can take a photo on my device, I can upload that photo, you can have that proof of, immediate proof of documentation, etc. And there's a lot of things that we can do if you just start thinking about the context of the student and saying, well, hey, they're not only just applying, how are they applying? Are they applying at work? Are they on their mobile device? Are they, how? And why not take this into a different channel? Why not take it into, a chat and allowing a bot to go and do this application process automatically? There's lots of different things that we can do over there. And I guess one of the points here is about making sure that we're providing consistency across those channels. Because we now have so many channels that are potentially available. If it's WhatsApp, if it's our LinkedIn account or our Facebook account, there's so many ways that students can reach out to us. But are they getting the same level of interaction, the same level of engagement, the same level of service across those? So they might have a great experience with your social media team who's dealing with your Facebook account, but then they come to the registrar and processing the application, and they just hit a brick wall. They don't have any feedback. There's nothing happening over there. And so we've got to make sure that we have this consistency across all the channels. So from email to contact center to SMS to chat to moving into the bot scenario and having a digitized chat process, to looking at all of our social accounts like LinkedIn and Facebook Messenger and Twitter and WhatsApp. We have to make sure that across all of these channels, we're having consistency, that we're keeping this guy in mind. He's at the center of our universe. We want him to feel special, but we're doing this times about 20,000. And the only way to do that is with technology. But we can, which is really cool. The last thing we want to do, of course, through this recruitment process is make sure that we're measuring constantly what's happening. We're looking at those processes. We're saying, where is he going wrong? Where is he going right? Where do we potentially have a bottleneck? How can we iterate and improve our processes? How can we make things better? How can we see, oh, geez, Jeanette is swamped down there. She's processing all these things on her own. She has no hope. Let's go and see if we can fix it. So throughout the system, we get the ability to go do things like this. I can see Tayola's interaction with us. I can see the emails that he's sent, the website that he's visited, the forms that he's captured, the social media campaigns he's interacted with. I can see that all in context, and I can see it chronologically. This is the latest action flowing back into the past. I can see how he's interacting with us. And that is going to help me to change how we staff and how we use the valuable minimal resources that we have to service the needs. We can look at over here, marketing return on investment, saying, hey, we're running a campaign, we're tracking budgets, so there's our budgets, and here's how much we've spent so far, so we're okay now. how many leads is this producing, from those leads, how many applications are being processed. We want to see, if I'm going to go and spend R500,000 on a marketing campaign, how much money ultimately is that marketing campaign making me, and is it worth it? And if we're not measuring, if we're not monitoring this, then we're just going to keep on throwing good money after bad work, and it's not going to go anywhere. We're not going to be making the impact that we intended to make. And so we need this constant feedback, this constant feedback loop, so that you can adjust and do better next time. We might want to see where they are specifically on their journey. This registration, 25 people came in, they got an email automatically sent to them. We set up a little timer to say, once you've sent that first mailer, wait a couple of days, then send another one to follow up, because we're trying to get them to an event, or we're trying to get them to come in for a visit to tour the institution, whatever it is. And these journeys you can set up and put in different timers and different conditions, and you can move between channels, send an email, then an SMS, then follow up with something else, then invite them to a webinar, then do something else, send them an automated webinar link after the fact. You guys have actually experienced this yourself. You've been a product of marketing automation for this particular event. Tanya went and set up using Dynamics this whole process, and saying, if you went and signed up for the event, you got automated emails. You probably got an email this morning saying, hey, today's the day, we're going to be having our webinar. So these are, you've experienced firsthand. I'd love to hear your feedback on that, and if you thought it was cool, if you didn't even read it, if you didn't even notice, that would also be an interesting insight. But as marketers, and as people who care about the student success, we've got to come and evaluate how we're doing these things and what impact we're making, and is it making an impact, and are people following on the right channels and through the right processes. So super important to get some feedback over there. All right, so that kind of encapsulates the conversation around the application process. Of course, I didn't go too deep through enrollment and through registration and through booking student housing and all that kind of stuff. And that, of course, is possible. We've done that with clients before, orchestrating the work between different departments, making sure that it's not just at the application stage, but that communication, that conversation is happening all the way through. Thanks for the feedback, Friedrich. No, that's really great. So, yeah, don't just stop at the application process, because I think, you know, it's kind of like if you equate it to retail, you know, oh, you get this beautiful ad on TV, Adidas has got this new pair of shoes, and you're like, oh, I love those shoes, and you go run and get them, and then you put them on, and they're the worst pair of shoes in your life, and you're like, oh, this is horrendous. And then they just forget about you and don't do anything after that. What's going to happen? Well, you're probably never going to buy a pair of Adidas again, are you? Because the message that you were sold up front, the promise that was made to you, was not actually delivered on, and wasn't carried through the process. What would have been better is if you had great after-sales service, that when the shoes didn't fit correctly, you took them back and they sat and understood a little bit more about you and matched the right pair of shoes to you. It's a ridiculous comparison, but it's a simplified version of the same thing. The application, the shiny, come and be part of something, come and study at our institution, 100 years of history, or digital first, or whatever your messaging is, whatever marketing you're putting out there, are you carrying that through the process, through enrollment, through registration, through engagement? And so now, as we get to retention, we're going to be talking about how do we continue that journey, we keep the high level of engagement up. We've got to keep our eyes on our students. We've got to make sure that, not in a creepy way, of course, but we've got to make sure that we're collecting the right data and the right information, so that we can use that information to provide better service and better product back to normal. So Microsoft, for this is just an example. It's not completely set up for education, but this is called Customer Insights. It's a module that Microsoft have in their business application suite. And the beautiful thing about this module is that, although it's Microsoft based, it is not specific or exclusive to Microsoft. You can take your Oracle ITS database and connect it in here. You can take your Excel spreadsheets. You can take some other kind of SQL backend, data warehouse that you've got sitting over there with IT, data from anywhere, from your Exchange server, from your contact center, whatever the case may be, we can bring that data together into this one universe of data, this customer insights universe, where the data is centered on the individual. And we can start looking at things like attribution. They came from this campaign and then they bought this particular program or course or qualification, and then they did something else. That's what is the attribution? Well, it started off with that particular campaign. How do we amplify that? How do we repeat that success in the future? Did everybody follow that same channel, or did they go through different processes? The more data we collect about our students, and obviously we have to follow POPI regulations and GDPR and all those good things, and the system absolutely does that. But how can we use our interactions with them to create new opportunities, to go and spot the potential for churn? Think about this. What about students who are starting to struggle to pay their bills, right? They're not proud of it, they're good students, they just can't afford it. I mean, I think that is a story that we hear too much and too many times. Somebody couldn't get their degree, even though they passed everything, they couldn't go get it because they couldn't pay their tuition. And so if we can see early signals of problems there, we can take action, we can do something about it. Not wait until the end, until disappointment comes. How do we start connecting those students with financial problems, with institutions and organizations that can help, that can provide financial aid, that can potentially set them up with internship programs and maybe take on some of that financial responsibility, not hustling right at the end like everybody does because we're not paying attention to it. If we set up a specific campaign or a specific set of data points to look and see early detection for poor account payers, we can start intervening and we can make that whole experience with them so much better. It's not just about cross-selling and upselling. This is about a brand loyalty. Imagine you helped a student to connect with the right person that got their tuition paid for them. How much would that mean to them? How much would that mean to you in future? Who would they tell? If they're digital native and they're on their phone and they're tweeting about it and they're on TikTok and they're making a video about how happy they are and you made their dreams come true. Imagine what that could do. You can't pay money to get that kind of advertising. And so it's those little things, it's those little connections that you're potentially not thinking through that data can bring to the fore and can say, hey, look here, here's an opportunity. All right. The next piece is that, while students are studying, they need help. They need to know maybe when the exam is booked, they maybe need to, maybe they're in residency somewhere and something's gone wrong with the plumbing, whatever it is. They might just want to be connected to a study group, they might want to join a club, they might need to know how to pay their account, they might want an academic transcript, whatever it is, they need help. And you need to help them. And so again, Dynamics has got this ability to log those queries that are coming in. This is just a generic kind of case coming in. And we call it a case because it can be anything. It can be an HR request. I've had some harassment on campus and I need help. It could be, oh, my computer's not working, my email account's messed up, so I need to be routed to IT to go and get that sorted out. It might be a housing related issue, as I said before. It might be something related to faculty and we need to escalate that. And so using the same kind of robust structure and system can help us to step through each of these stages, each of these departments, and help us to satisfy the students' needs and requirements. We can apply things like service level agreements, which is really a turnaround time. So we're saying, hey, we want to benchmark an 8-hour turnaround on these types of queries because it's super important. Or this one's not so important. We've got 40 hours kind of to respond within a business hours. That's no problem. But importantly, we want to track this. We want to track these claims. We want to link it back to that record of Norma's so that we can say, okay, how many queries did she put through in her life with us, and were they dealt with appropriately? Did we sort her out? Was she happy with them? Maybe we want to send out a post kind of issue resolution survey to say, rate us on a scale of 1 to 5, how satisfied you are, all those kind of things. We want to help improve our service to you. If you don't have a system to control these things, how are you doing it? You're probably buried under email. The phone is constantly ringing. You're forgetting things. You're writing things down all over the place. It looks like a disaster around you. And so, using systems, we can get through things a lot quicker. We can not forget things, and we can follow processes that help us to give great service. We can also have access to things like knowledge base articles, where you might not know the answer, but somebody in the organization does. So how can you connect to that person who has that answer, or go and read up from a frequently asked questions set and then provide that answer straight away? We work with the Nelson Mandela University down in PE, and they have a student contact center which is driven and run by the students themselves. It's always different students every year. They do it as part of like a giving back to the university, and they sit in the contact center and they answer queries. And they deal with things like account balances and maybe something related to the person's transcripts or whatever the case may be. But it's students dealing with students, and they get trained on the system and they answer because they have a knowledge base at their disposal. They have all the information at their disposal. We've integrated with their back-end student management system, so I can see all that information in one place. And so we're giving them the capability to service students with students, which is, I think, pretty cool. And again, the conversation of channels comes up, because this service, this helping keep that student happy, retaining them in the best possible way, is about doing it over multiple channels. And so there's some really, really cool stuff at the moment in the tech world about how to do this omni-channel, how to deal with omni-channel. And omni-channel just means many channels all at once and across channels. And so what I've got here is a couple of examples of how we can go from dealing with a bot, a virtual bot, to then dealing with a human being. And so Microsoft's got this really awesome piece of technology called the virtual agent, where you can go set up sort of plain English queries that say, when Norma comes to us and she, let's say, contacts us over Facebook Messenger, we want to then ask her some questions saying, hey, thanks for contacting us. What are you contacting me for? What is it related to? And then give her some options to choose through. And then based on the answers that she provides, you can go through different paths, branches as we call them. And so this, in the past, if you wanted to set up a bot, chat bot or whatever, you had to hire developers, and it would cost a hell of a lot of money. And they would have to write code, and that code would be deployed and need to be tested. And typically the people writing the code and the people needing the answers done are not the same people. And so, what a nightmare. Now you can go and use the virtual agent to go and build those things yourself without code. If you need code, if you want to reach out to fetch an account balance or something like that, you can't even do that without code. It depends on how we've gone and helped set that up. And that's where the power of Microsoft starts coming to the fore. If you're using something like Dynamics along with a virtual agent, you can go get access to that data straight away. You don't need Dynamics to have the virtual agent. You can run this separately, and you can have a virtual bot on top of your existing IT investments. And that's a beautiful thing. You can take the pieces that you need and you can use them as you want to. So now, in this virtual agent, I can go and simulate and see, okay, this is the chat. I provided my email, then the bot responded with, I see your smart printer you purchased on blah, blah, blah. That person said yes, and said, okay, I can contact you. Would you like me to do so? And it's asking for some questions. Now, this conversation that the bot has, at some point, this student might want to deal with a human being. They don't want to talk to the bot anymore because they have a more complex question or whatever. So the bot can go and answer as much as you set it up. It can go fetch data. Hey, what's my account balance? Oh, here it is. I've gone and fetched it for you. Or what was my grade on that last exam? Oh, there it is. I went and fetched it for you. That's what it is. Now I've got a query. Oh, look, I'm not happy with that grade, or I'm not happy with that account balance. I need to speak to someone. How do we hand that off? And so that's when omnichannel comes into it, to say, well, actually, here's the chat or the history of the chat there, and this has been routed to me as an agent. And here I sit and I go, oh, okay, I can see that you've had a conversation with a bot. I can have a look up at the top here. Because Microsoft's technology at the moment is amazing, it's reading through all the conversation that's happening, and it's detecting sentiment. It's looking and saying, are you angry? Are you using big capital letters? You're not listening to me. Are you getting frustrated? Because if you are getting frustrated and your sentiment is poor, then I need to respond as a human being to you in a different way than if you're positive. And so I can see that right at my fingertips. I've got access to canned responses. I can collaborate with a colleague to help with this query if I don't know the answer. I've got your record over here. I can see your recent history, the timeline of interaction communication. I've got everything I want. At the top here, I can look at the further knowledge base to break down and see how do I solve your query as quickly as possible. So what Microsoft is doing is giving a single window to a, let's call it a contact center agent or a person trying to help with queries to get these things done as quickly as possible. And this can be any channel. It can be WhatsApp Messenger, it could be Facebook Messenger, it could be chat on the web, it could be email, it could be whatever. And we're routing these queries through this single engine that's making decisions. Who do I need to give this to? Who's available? Who's got work or too much work that can't take this? Somebody else got less work. Let's give this request over to them. So Omnichannel is making all those decisions, and it's really quite fascinating how it works. So here's the customer or student, Frida. She's coming in over a channel, can be pretty much any channel as I spoke to you about before. We're then going and categorizing it in the back end to say what kind of priority should we give this based on where it's coming from. So if it's coming through chat, it's high priority because they're there right now, they're talking to us. If they fill out a kind of contact form, okay, that goes through a slightly lower lower capacity or lower priority because I'm not necessarily expecting them to get back to me immediately. Or if I left a message or sent an email, it can go through a different set of prioritization. So you can define based on the channel what the priority is, and then we categorize it. And that's where bots are great because the bot can ask a couple of questions up front and say, why are you here? What do you need? So that I can route you to the right place. And over here, we can see, okay, she's actually she's got a billing query. And so instead of sending her to the product team, I'm going to send it to the billing team. With Omnichannel, what it can do is it can look at the team and assess skill level and capability level, and then make sure that we're sending the right queries through to the right people based on their ability to help with that query, which is pretty remarkable. So there's a lot of decisions and a lot of intelligence in the back end to make sure that Frida gets the answers that she needs. All right. So if we go back here, we want to make sure that we're serving Norma's needs across various departments, across the campuses, and like I said before, with that consistent handover from application through to enrollment, through to registration, through to etc. We want to make sure that service is being delivered consistently across everybody, all the departments, all the campuses. And so you can use Dynamics and you can use the systems in any department for any reason. Here's an example of the portal we did for Nelson Mandela University a while back, where, excuse me, this particular portal is actually to help staff members. We've got a student portal as well, but this is an internal portal to help staff members to log queries around human resources and ICT. So if they've got an issue with their printer, or if they've got a harassment case to log, or whatever the case may be, they can do that in a simple self-service way. Because it's not only about looking after your students, it's also looking after your colleagues, looking after faculty, looking after all the different departments that are supporting students. We want to make sure that we're all providing that high level of service across the board. The other thing that I wanted to talk about at this point was, of course, the connection of technology back into things like buildings and people and awareness and where they are. And so in 2 weeks' time, we're having that webinar, as I spoke about, around the connected campus and how can we do things. We're actually going to be taking you through an example of how we've worked with Sulplaki University to help them to administer and control meals, and how they give out meals at the various catering facilities around their various campuses. And how they control which students have got access to what and what they're entitled to. And it's a very interesting case study that Graham's going to take us through. And so, yeah, we can connect students and buildings and access control and all kinds of things. It's not just about handling queries. This is about an all-encompassed, fully connected studying and learning environment, which is the most important thing. All right, so retaining people is about making sure that their experience with us when they are with us as good as possible. And of course, at the end of the day, we also have to help them to complete those studies, because without completing them, they're certainly not going to have tick the tick box and achieve the objectives that they set out to. And this particular conversation actually ties back into, a couple of the other framework areas like online learning and how do we assist those kind of things. And so I'm going to touch on a few things, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what's possible and what we've been doing with some institutions out there. So we want to, as I said, we want to ensure, in this case, Marie's success. We want to make sure that she gets that executive education that she's looking for, that that then turns into the role and the career she's looking for. And how do we go and do that? Well, one of the important things that we talk about with our clients is about making single entry points. So making it really, really simple for Marie to deal with us. So if you think about yourself and you think about the different faculties, the different ways of communicating, how do your students currently communicate with you? They might have 2 or 3 or 4 different student portals that they need to log into, or a SharePoint site somewhere that's got some documentation, or a website that they need to log into for something, or a Moodle site that they need to go and get access to online LMS content. What we're suggesting is that to make this process as smooth and seamless as possible, and to ensure that all students go through and ultimately are successful, send them to one place. Start them off in a portal that talks back to kind of the core CRM system that says, we understand you and who you are and where you need to go. And through that single pane of glass, I can then pass them off through to the LMS. I can pass them off through to the account system for them to go process a payment or whatever the case may be. If you provide them 58 places to go, chances are they're not going to go to all 58 places, and chances are they're going to miss out on some stuff. And that may impact whether they're able to complete things or not. And so you just want to kind of remove the barriers to entry and say, well, okay, let's look at how to bring them together. And portals are a really good way to do that. The next thing might be around making sure that Marie can be successful based on the courses that she goes to, the lectures that are provided, the kind of content that she gets across and through, and just making sure that we're scheduling and running all of this in the appropriate way. And again, Microsoft's got some really, really amazing tools in the scheduling space, and we've done some work with a business called NOSA. They do occupational health and safety training. I'll actually send out the deck, and there's a link to a case study that we've done with them, and we help them to manage their short courses. As I said, they provide occupational health and safety training, and they do that to people across 24 branches around the country. And they're looking at ways to digitize that content and provide access to more people around Africa and the rest of the world. But Dynamics as a central nervous system, as a central business application, drives the whole process from registering for a course to scheduling the appropriate lecturer, facilitator, to make sure that we've got the marking is done appropriately, that certificates are not printed, but digitally created and sent to the students, and it's all handled in this beautiful digital process, nice and seamless. And so there's some amazing stuff, and you can go and read the case study. If you want to find out more about what we've done there, we can get into it for sure. Next piece, as I said, how do we, we've got this portal that maybe sends them off to Moodle to go and get their learning, or maybe we want to start looking at Teams or something like that. But I want to start bringing the data of how they're engaging there back in. So now, maybe we're doing this digitally, so we want to see, let's say, active engagement in the courseware that's online. Maybe if you think about connected campus kind of scenarios, we want to maybe give people access tags or RFID tags that tell me that Marie actually went to that lecture, that she actually participated, or maybe she skipped out halfway through. What kind of learning experience are the students having when they're in there? Are they completing it? I had a conversation with a Microsoft executive a few weeks ago, and she told me that she saw some scary statistic of only 5% of courses that are started online are completed. That is tremendously scary, particularly if we are paying for it. And so it might be specific to maybe corporate education or something like that, I'm not sure. But if I look at that and I ask you the question, if you've got digital content, or indeed traditional lecture-based content, how many people are actually completing that? And if I am honest, I can tell you that in my third year of university, I went to a few lectures, but not all. And I went to the ones where you go to that lecture because that's when you learn what's going to be in the test that's coming up. And so if you as an institution know that naughty Shaun is not going to the courses and that naughty Shaun is going to flunk his exam in a month's time because he's not putting in the work, how can we start intervening? How can we start making sure that we are saying, hey, Shaun, yeah, we know you skipped out on that lecture, man. Come on, we're going to bring you back in. We're going to give you the right access to the courseware, make sure that you're putting in the work. Because when you put in the work, you get the results. So if we can start looking at the role of digital through that process, saying, well, let's monitor, not in a creepy way, in a way that we want to make sure that we achieve success and we help them to complete their studies. Can we see how engaged they are? Yes, we can. We can just think slightly differently and say, okay, cool, let's bring that data in again. Bring it into that one central place, because that's where I'm going to see everything. I'm going to see, maybe they've got some financial pressure and that's causing them to not attend, or whatever the case may be. But if you're not even looking for it, you're never going to even know that you need to bring up an answer for that. And so monitoring their involvement and their engagement through the process is also becoming super important. Having a look at Teams as an online engagement platform, it's something that I think a lot of businesses accelerated. It's an area that Microsoft have grown in the hundreds of percentages around the world, obviously due to COVID. But more and more organizations and institutions are looking at technology like Teams and others to see how do we engage online. I was talking to Tanya earlier about this particular webinar. This is a simple Teams meeting that we're having right now, and we're able to engage and collaborate in all new ways that we weren't able to do before. And even making this kind of content accessible for people that are participating to say, I want to actually engage. I don't want to just sit and listen to some guy talking for 2 hours, although unfortunately that's what you're doing right now. But looking at Teams as a platform, there's a lot of different opportunities. There's a lot of different avenues. In this deck, I've actually put a couple of case studies in here. We don't have time to go and watch all these videos, but there's some fascinating stuff that the University of New South Wales is doing over there in Australia, using Teams to really amplify student success, to put lecturers more in touch with their students. There's artificial intelligence infused monitoring. There's all sorts of amazing stuff going on over there. I'll send you these links and you can go watch these videos. The first one is about 2 minutes odd, and the second one is about 8 to 10 minutes. It's really worthwhile spending and having a look at what's going on over there. Then lastly, obviously, from a completion point of view, we want to look at the opportunity to say, okay, let's assume that Marie's going to be successful. How do we now start looking at the next step and start marketing that to saying, okay, you're finishing your certificate. Now maybe what about a master's? Maybe you want to take that next step. Maybe you want to have a look at that kind of at that process. I recently attended a information session at an institution, looking at doing some further postgrad studies myself, and trying to weigh up, do I look at a kind of postgrad certificate? Do I look at more a master's kind of course? And I'm in that decisioning going, do I have enough time? Do I have enough, can I throw the right kind of investment into this thing and make sure that I'm successful? What I can tell you is that happened 2-3 weeks ago. The deadline is end of this month, and I haven't been contacted again by that institution to see, hey, Shaun, we know you started this process. You even came to the information gathering session. You spent an hour with us in one evening on your own time. Are you going to come? Is there anything we can offer you? And I think this is kind of, I don't want to name and shame, because it's certainly it's not the point. I think the point here is to say there's an opportunity to do more. There's an opportunity to look for to ask a couple of questions. Hey, Shaun, what are you really looking for? And how can we come alongside and help you? And, are you right for this thing? And if you are, let's put it all together and make it happen. Because I think that's important as well, is that it's not, you're not just trying to attract students, you're trying to attract the right type of student for the right type of course or the right type of program, and you want success. Because if that all comes together right, you've got a customer for life, you've got somebody who's going to amplify your messaging, you're going to have a great experience, it's going to be awesome to take them through that, and everything's well aligned. That's just some things to think about. And then, of course, tying back out of that student success into alumni, what are the kind of tools that are available? And again, I can talk on this for a long time, but I want to kind of keep it nice and simple and say, I see Uncle Cyril let us out a little bit more last night. So gatherings of up to 250 people indoors and up to 500 people outside is now going to be available coming soon. And so you can start thinking about events. You can start thinking about how do we bring people back in? How do we bring people back in? How do we do that safely? How do we provide this hybrid kind of content, blend an in-person experience with an online experience, making sure that you're providing a great event to all of those people that are in attendance. And so there's some tools, some really, really nice tools that Microsoft have got to help you with that eventing and event management. If you're looking at it from a fundraising and donation management point of view, again, Microsoft's got some really cool tools to say, hey, we want to put some programs together, some initiatives to raise some funds, to go and reach out to companies and businesses and government, and how can we go do this? Who's doing what activity, and how do we make sure that we are raising the right kind of funds, and that we're looking after those donors, because we want to keep them investing, we want to keep them seeing success. And again, what about an alumni portal with some reporting back to say, hey, you gave us this amount of money, this is how we used it, this is where it went, you educated this many people, this is the impact that you made over there. Can we do a case study? How do we do this? How do we amplify this this great work that's happening? And then lastly, some basic stuff like, hey, let's get them into email newsletters, keep them informed, keep them up to date, keep them on the line, make sure that we're engaging with them through social media, we're watching and monitoring their progress, we're telling the stories of success, because it's the stories that everybody wants, right? Remember what the students told you right up front. They want that future, they want that success, they want that career, whatever it is, it's about them. And so connect them with those people, connect them with, Marie is a successful executive now. She did these courses. Look at what she's doing with her career. This is fascinating. Let's get her to speak at some of these events. It's all about that social connection that we crave as human beings, and let's go tell those stories. And then simple things like, managing your social media posts and how you're driving people to your websites and how you're recording those leads back in, and how you're dealing with these kind of things, and seeing if we can connect up there. And as I say, using platforms like LinkedIn professional networks to get out there and make new connections and service and engage with these alumni. There's a bunch of tools, and the beautiful thing is that it's, again, all within that one single application framework, the CRM kind of environment, where I've got your whole history as a student all the way from the beginning. And so that ultimately is how digital enables student success, is because we want to make sure that we've got that 360-degree view of that student as they go through their life cycle with us, from the day they meet us, through their courseware, through the program that they sign up for, to make sure that that's completed, and then to bring them back as an alum and go through the process again and again and again. So that's me for the content, folks. It's been great. The deck out to you guys who participated, and including in the deck is a couple of links over here to things like case studies that we have with institutions that we've worked with, and then other institutions around the world. So you can just go and do a little bit more additional reading. And as I said before, Tanya will be sending out links to the recording so that you can go catch up, share it with your colleagues if you would like. And we'd love to continue this dialogue. We'd love to chat with you, to understand your institution a little bit more, and to find out more about how we can help you. So if you want to have a one-to-one conversation with us, we welcome that, and we look forward to having that conversation.